All right, welcome back to the CTO Dose. My name is Joep Piscar. I'm joined by Howard Marks, and we're going to talk about some of the developments here at VMworld. You know, what's going on, what are we seeing, what's making our hearts stick. You know, what are we seeing that makes us happy. So, Howard, I want to first kind of lead with is there anything in particular that kind of made you happy this week that you saw?
Well, there's the things that make me happy that I don't understand yet.
Right.
Kubernetes is the new hotness,
just like everybody else.
And I'm just a mere storage guy. So it's interesting to see how the evolution's going. One of the things I'm really happy to see is VMware re-engaging on vVols.
Right.
That vVols came out 5 or 6 years ago. I spoke 5 times at that VMworld about how wonderful vVols were going to be. Everybody got really excited. And then 2 or 3 years later, everybody got really disappointed that people hadn't adopted it.
Right.
But it should have been obvious. In order to get vVols working, you had to replace your hypervisor with the latest version that supported vVols.
Yeah.
And then you had to also replace your storage system with the latest version that supported vVols. And that's at least 3 years. And 2 years after vVols came out, people were calling it dead. Well, now we're 5 or 6 years after vVols came out, and VMware has gotten Pure and HPE, and to a lesser extent Dell EMC, because they don't have the best implementation.
Wow.
But they've gotten all the vendors in a row. So now they can go back to users and go, okay, you have this feature in the array you just bought. You have this feature in the hypervisor you just bought. Turn them on. Start using array snapshots instead of VMware snapshots, which, apologies to my friend Satya and Vagani, stink.
They still do.
And so, I'm excited that VMware hasn't decided, well, vSAN is the answer for VMware storage, and that's the way we're going to do it, because that way we can put the storage vendors out of business, which a decision too many companies would make.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in that.
Right.
I'm no longer an independent observer of the storage industry. I'm now a participant. I work at Vast Data. We make a very large storage system, and we are not quite busy in the VMware space yet, because the number of customers who need many petabytes of VMware storage are small.
That's a large, it's a small number of customers.
Yeah, it's a small number of customers.
Yeah.
But one of the technologies that underlies what we do, NVMe over Fabrics, is just on the cusp of coming to VMware.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard that much about it this week. I mean, there's, tidbits of information, a session here or there, but
today, what we're seeing is storage systems using NVMe over Fabrics on the back end. So our system or Pure Flash Array X, instead of using SAS, uses Ethernet and NVMe over Fabrics to connect the expansion shelves. In their model, it's interesting because it reduces latency. In our model, it's more interesting because NVMe over Fabrics breaks the 2-to-1 connections to a device limit that SAS had. So in SAS, you have 2 controllers and you have a dual port drive, but you can't connect 3 controllers or 5 controllers or 20 controllers to an SSD or a hard drive.
Yeah.
In a Fabric, Ethernet sits in between it, so you can have an arbitrary number of controllers access an arbitrary number of SSDs.
That's going to be many to many.
Right,
Yeah.
and so that many-to-many starts to become very interesting for what we do, where we front-end that with software and build a very large storage system, or even with a system like vSAN, if instead of having the SSDs in vSAN in the server, they were in an external cabinet, still owned by one server. When a server went offline, you wouldn't have to rebuild the data and have all that traffic and load. You'd just have to have another server attach to the SSDs that used to be attached to the first server, so the recovery can be much faster, and the complexity that HCI adds to maintaining a cluster where it goes away. Because when you install vSAN, all of a sudden what used to be a stateless compute server becomes a stateful storage server. And you have to treat all of your servers like storage.
Yeah, you have to track everything.
And as an old line storage guy, that means I'm a paranoid person, because when things go wrong with storage, things stay wrong with storage.
Yeah.
So managing servers like storage means, well, we don't do vMotion in the middle of the day, we don't do firmware upgrades in the middle of the day, we declare an outage because something could go wrong. And I'd much rather run my vSphere as stateless and be able to do that work in the middle of the day than have to come in on a weekend and do those things. So I'm really, the NVMe over Fabrics is just getting to that stage of maturity. The next step is for VMware to put the driver into the hypervisor, which is probably the next version. You know, I've talked to enough people inside VMware that it's like, yeah, it's working inside VMware. We're not really ready, not quite ready to release yet. So I'm looking forward to that.
And is it going to be a same cycle, just as with vSAN? People are going to talk about it, probably next year, and then it'll take a couple of years before adoption.
I think it'll be faster because the storage systems are already ready.
Yeah.
So the problem with vVols was there was one starting point and both sides had to start at the same point.
Right.
The storage guys have already started, so now it's waiting for VMware to catch up, as opposed to waiting for both of them to reach both state of maturity and having been around long enough that people have already bought it.
Yeah.
Because people replace their hardware in a 3, 4, 5 year cycle. And so a new feature to get to 90% penetration, that's 5 years, absolute minimum.
Yeah. And so what's the use case of this? I mean, I get it in like a large media company, but why would you want to use this in a VMware environment?
Well, there's the cleaning up of how HCI works pieces, and it's going to be the future. That SaaS is, to use the term from Men in Black, old and busted. It's a point-to-point technology. It doesn't get faster as fast as Ethernet gets faster. It gets more expensive every time it gets faster because the number of customers who care is much smaller. And so being able to use Ethernet to connect SSDs to servers is just over time going to become a better and better idea because the old versions don't get updated. There are latency and performance advantages, but frankly, few VMs need more performance than a fiber channel all-flash array provides. It's like, yes, the new systems are faster, but that's like you went from the Dodge Challenger with the 600 horsepower engine to the Hellcat with the 800 horsepower engine, but you're driving in San Francisco where you can't go uphill faster than 20 miles an hour anyway. So the need just isn't there. A couple of years ago, I sent out a request for help to the Tech Field Day group saying, how many IOPS does a server use? Does a VM use? And that group sent me about data on about 14,000 VMs.
Yeah, well, I remember sending mine.
And the average was just over 100 IOPS. Most people have a lot of not very active VMs. So the performance isn't really the answer; it's the flexibility.
It is. Well, that's kind of where I'm not entirely seeing the use case in terms of your bog standard traditional vSphere customer. I mean, they only have a couple of hosts, maybe a couple of dozen hosts. It's not complex. I mean, with everybody moving to the cloud, how relevant is this technology going to be?
I don't believe everybody's moving to the cloud.
Right.
I have dealt with too many customers where the workloads just don't fit the cloud, or the locations don't fit the cloud. I used to have a client, the Central Soya Company. They process soybeans into soybean oil and soybean meal and animal feed. Their plants are literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And if you say, we're going to take all the applications that run this plant and we're going to put them in Amazon.
Miles away, thousands of miles away, maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
where there's only one ISP that serves that plant. Someday in the fall, when farmers would bring trucks of soybeans to that plant, that link is going to fail.
Yeah.
And the plant has to shut down. So there are, if you're in a major city where there's multiple providers who'll give you gigabit connections, then then you can put everything in Amazon. If you have to do plant automation and things have to run even when the internet goes down, you have to be on premises.
Yeah.
And at the large scale, Amazon is more efficient than the average IT department. Amazon's not that much more efficient than the leading well-run IT departments.
Mm-hmm.
And Amazon adds a profit margin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're JP Morgan or Bank of America, then you're going to keep a lot of things on premises. And then there's the data gravity problem. Because if you literally are JP Morgan or Bank of America, the core application runs on a mainframe.
Yeah.
There is no mainframe as a service in AWS or GCP. But there are 4,000 VMs that run on x86s that access the same data sets as the mainframe application.
Yeah,
that's the crown jewels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the latency of moving those servers to AWS so that they have to do database queries against DB2 in the mainframe in my data center is going to make those things break.
Yeah, that sounds like a good story, yeah.
So, move everything to the cloud is easy. Why don't we refactor all of our applications? Well, it took 12 years to write this application in the first place, and everybody who wrote it retired. To refactor it, just to understand what it does, is going to take 12 years.
Yeah.
And it works now. Is that, if I move things to the cloud, do they necessarily work better? Well, sometimes they do, no question. But being in the cloud isn't necessarily better. Sometimes it's better.
It is. Yeah. And that makes it harder, right? I mean, you have it working now. Don't touch it. Leave it.
Well,
that creates additional technical debt.
Right.
So,
and I find it amusing when young people talk about eliminating technical debt. Technical debt is like the federal deficit.
Yeah.
You don't eliminate technical debt. You refinance technical debt. You take your old technical debt you're paying 12% interest on, and you roll it over into a new note you can pay 4% interest on. And so your old system was, and so systems reach the point where they get really creaky, and you fix the ones that are really creaky and make them okay.
Just good enough.
Or, if you're a well-run organization, you perfect those, but there's always another one, 10 years from now, what is perfect will be creaky.
Yeah.
There's always technical debt. You don't eliminate it, you just roll it over.
Yeah.
And so the whole let's clean everything all at once, it's kind of like, okay, I was involved in that. I was a senior manager at Deloitte, and a large food company hired us to replace their entire IT infrastructure because Y2K was coming.
Yeah.
That company spent $38.4 million with Deloitte and was sold for $24 million 19 months later. Sometimes it's like, oh, well, I can clean up all this technical debt, and then you'll have real dollar debt and won't be able to keep the business going.
Yeah, it's either way.
There's no winning.
Yeah. All right. So, back to NVMe for a little bit. Are there any sessions at VMworld where you think, okay, this is good explanation, people should go here?
The sad thing is I have not spent any time with the scheduler.
Right.
I'm here to evangelize vast data and to talk to my friends in the community who I've been lucky enough to make over the years, who are in positions to tell me what their needs are as a customer so that we can refine the product. And so I'm really here to talk more than to go to the sessions. When I get home, the sessions will be on video and I can watch them.
Yeah.
I saw Craig Waters from Pure on the V Brown Bag stage this morning doing something on NVMe, but that's because I happen to be in the neighborhood. So,
all right. So
I'm not the person to talk to about what sessions are really interesting. Sorry.
So the good tip is after VMworld, everything's online. Look it up if you're interested. So I guess our time is up. Absolutely. Thanks for being here, Howard.
Always a pleasure, you.
And we'll see each other next time.
I'm sure.